Mandy, come back here.
Excuse me, sir, can I buy you?
What? The mall in Gangnam was the kind of place where silence felt expensive. Soft classical music floated above polished marble floors, blending with the scent of luxury perfumes and fresh coffee from cafes that charged more for atmosphere than drinks. People moved carefully here, dressed in tailored coats and quiet confidence, as if the building itself demanded elegance. Son Bin Choi walked through it like a man untouched by warmth. Tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in a dark tailored suit, he carried the reputation of one of Korea's youngest and most feared CEOs. His presence parted people subtly, not out of fear, but respect sharpened by rumor. He did not smile. He did not rush. He had nowhere to be emotionally. Love, family, distraction, those were inefficiencies. He was reviewing numbers on his phone when something small collided with his leg. Not hard, not careless, just sudden. He stopped. Slowly he looked down. A little black girl stood in front of him, no taller than his thigh, her hair styled into neat little braids with colorful beads that clicked softly as she moved. Her cheeks were round, her eyes wide and curious, and in her small hands she clutched a crumpled pink bill. Behind her, a woman froze. "Mandy," the woman whispered urgently, her voice trembling. "Mandy, come back here." But the child was already looking up at him. "Excuse me, sir," the girl said clearly with the confidence only children possessed. "Can I buy you?" The world seemed to pause. Son Bin blinked. "What?" Mandy lifted the bill higher, stretching her arm as far as it would go. "This is all I have. Mommy says it's a lot of money. Can you please go on one date with her?" A few nearby shoppers slowed, curiosity flickering across their faces. Katie Masson felt her soul leave her body. "I am so sorry," she said quickly, rushing forward, her accent soft but noticeable, her face flushed with embarrassment. "She doesn't know what she's saying. Mandy, that's not." "It's okay, Mommy," Mandy insisted, turning back to the man. "You look lonely." That word landed harder than the collision. Lonely. Son Bin stared at the child, something unfamiliar tightening briefly in his chest. People had called him many things: cruel, cold, ruthless, but never lonely. He straightened slowly, tucking his phone away. "And why?" he asked calmly, his deep voice steady. "Does your mother need a date?" Mandy thought seriously before answering. "Because she cries when she thinks I'm asleep," she said simply. "And because the other man was bad." Katie gasped softly. "Mandy." But it was too late. Son Bin's gaze shifted to Katie for the first time. Really looked at her. She was beautiful in a quiet, tired way, skin glowing softly under the mall lights, eyes heavy with responsibility, posture careful as if life had taught her not to take up too much space. She wasn't dressed poorly, just modestly, practically. A woman surviving, not showing off. And yet, there was strength there. Pain too. He looked back at the child. "What if I say no?" he asked. Mandy frowned. "Then I'll be sad." A beat. "And if I say yes?" She smiled, brilliant and hopeful. "Then Mommy might smile again." For reasons Son Bin Choi could not explain, he found himself kneeling slightly so he was closer to her level. "One date," he said quietly. "That's all." Mandy squealed. Katie stared at him in shock. "You don't have to," she said quickly, pride battling desperation. "I swear I didn't tell her to." "I know," he interrupted calmly, standing again. "Children can't act that well." He handed Mandy the bill back. "No payment," he said. "I don't take money from children." Then, looking directly at Katie, he added, "Have coffee with me. Today." It wasn't a question. And just like that, a cold man's carefully ordered life tilted, not because of a woman, but because of a 5-year-old girl who saw what the world never did. Katie Masson had not planned to sit across from a stranger like this. The cafe overlooked the mall's glass atrium, sunlight filtering in through tall windows and reflecting off polished tables. Mandy sat between them, swinging her legs happily, sipping hot chocolate with both hands as if she had just accomplished something historic. Katie, on the other hand, felt exposed. She smoothed her fingers over the rim of her coffee cup, the warmth seeping into her palms, grounding her. Across from her, Son Bin Choi sat with quiet composure, his presence commanding without effort. Even seated, he looked like a man used to controlling rooms, not sharing tables with single mothers and outspoken children. "I'm really sorry," Katie said again, her voice low. "She's bold. She's honest," Son Bin replied. "That's rare." Mandy beamed at that. Katie glanced at her daughter, then back at him. "Still, she shouldn't have spoken to you like that." "She spoke to me like a human," he said calmly. "Most adults don't." The words unsettled her. For a moment, silence settled, not awkward, just unfamiliar. Katie noticed his hands, steady and clean, resting lightly on the table. Not restless. Not distracted. A man fully present. "So," he said at last, "you're not Korean?" "No," Katie answered softly. "I'm American." "Here on vacation?" She hesitated. Mandy answered for her. "We live here now." Katie shot her daughter a gentle look. "Mandy." "It's okay," Sonbin said, watching her carefully. "You can tell me to stop asking." Katie exhaled slowly. "It's fine," she said. "We moved here 2 years ago. For work." "For survival," Katie corrected before she could stop herself. The word lingered. Sonbin did not react outwardly, but something shifted behind his eyes. He nodded once, accepting the honesty without pressing. Mandy leaned forward. "Mommy works a lot. She's very strong." Katie smiled faintly. "I do what I have to." Sonbin's gaze lingered on her now, not with interest, but with recognition. He knew that look. He had worn it himself once. The look of someone who had been stripped down to necessity. "What happened to Mandy's father?" he asked gently. Katie's fingers tightened around her cup. The memory rose uninvited. She had been married for 4 years. 4 years of building a life she thought was solid. A home filled with laughter, late dinners, shared dreams. She believed in partnership. In love that grew with time. Until the truth arrived like a blade. The second family. Not a rumor. Not a mistake. A whole life she had never been meant to know. She remembered the way her chest had tightened as she stood in that office, documents spread before her, realizing she had been sharing her husband not just with another woman but with an entire existence. When she confronted him, he hadn't begged. He looked relieved. "It wasn't supposed to hurt you," he had said. That was when something inside her broke cleanly. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She sold everything that tied her to him. Took her share. Packed her life into suitcases. And left. Korea had not been the dream. It had been the distance. "I was married," Katie said quietly. "I trusted the wrong man." Sonbin nodded. He did not ask for details. He didn't need them. Mandy rested her head against Katie's arm. "Daddy chose someone else." The simplicity of the sentence hurt more than any dramatic explanation. Sonbin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's not a reflection of your worth," he said firmly, his voice carrying something sharp and protective. "It's a reflection of his." Katie looked at him, then really looked. No pity, no curiosity, just certainty. "Thank you," she said softly. For the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar loosen in her chest. Not hope. Not love. Just the quiet relief of being seen without being judged. Across the table, Mandy smiled to herself, watching the two adults carefully. In her small, confident mind, the date was going exactly as planned. Katie Masson had once believed love was something you built carefully, brick by brick, with patience and trust. She had met her husband in the most ordinary way, through work, through shared ambition, through conversations that stretched late into the night and made her feel chosen. He had admired her independence, her warmth, the way she laughed freely without needing permission. For a while, she thought she had won something rare. They married quietly. No extravagant ceremony. Just promises spoken with sincerity and hope. Katie remembered standing in front of him, her hands trembling slightly as she said yes, believing she was stepping into a future that belonged to both of them. For the first year, life felt kind. The second year brought Mandy a miracle that filled their home with noise and wonder. Katie poured herself into motherhood, balancing work and love with exhaustion she wore proudly. She believed they were growing together. She did not see the cracks forming beneath her feet. The discovery came without drama. No lipstick on collars. No suspicious messages. Just a bank statement that didn't make sense. Money moving quietly. Regularly. Large enough to notice, small enough to hide. When she asked him about it, he hesitated, not in guilt, but in calculation. That was when Katie understood. The truth unfolded slowly, each detail more devastating than the last. Another woman. Another home. Another child. A life that ran parallel to hers, untouched by the love she thought they shared. She remembered sitting on the edge of their bed, Mandy asleep in the next room, listening as he explained it like an inconvenience rather than a betrayal. "It wasn't planned," he said. "It just happened." Katie said nothing. He spoke about responsibility, about obligation, about how she should understand. That was the moment she realized the marriage had never truly been hers. She had been a chapter, not the whole story. The divorce was swift. No begging. No apologies that mattered. His family treated her like an error that needed correcting. The woman replaced her openly without shame. Katie packed her life into boxes with steady hands and an unsteady heart. She sold the house, closed the accounts, took only what was hers. She refused alimony, not out of pride but because she wanted nothing tying her to him. Leaving America felt like running and like surviving at the same time. Korea was unfamiliar, beautiful, difficult. She arrived with a child, a suitcase, and a quiet determination not to break. The first year nearly destroyed her. She worked jobs that ignored her qualifications, smiled through subtle prejudice, learned a language that never bent easily to her tongue. At night, she cried into her pillow so Mandy would never hear. But she endured. She learned discipline from pain, structure from chaos. She studied, observed, adapted. By the time Katie finished her story, the cafe around them had changed shifts, light dimming as evening crept in. Mandy had fallen asleep against her shoulder, her small hand fisted into Katie's sweater. Sonbin had listened without interruption. No judgment, no interruption, no sympathy that felt like weakness. When she finished, he spoke quietly. "You didn't lose a marriage," he said. "You escaped a lie." Katie swallowed. "I don't feel like I won." "You survived," he replied. "That's always the first victory." She looked at him then, seeing not just a cold CEO, but a man who understood survival in ways he did not advertise. Outside, Seoul glowed with quiet ambition. Inside, something unseen but important had begun to shift. Two broken histories sitting at the same table, not yet touching but no longer strangers. Sonbin Choi had learned early that emotion was a liability. Long before boardrooms and billion-won deals, before tailored suits and quiet authority, he had been a boy who watched his home collapse in slow, irreversible ways. His father had been brilliant and ruthless in business, generous in public, and absent in every way that mattered. Love in that house came with conditions. When Sonbin's mother fell ill, the house filled with doctors, assistants, and whispered conversations but never warmth. He remembered standing outside her bedroom door, listening to his father argue about costs and optics instead of comfort. She died quietly. The next morning his father went to work. That was when Sonbin understood the rule of his world. Feelings were disposable. He buried his grief beneath discipline, turned pain into performance, excelled not for praise but for control. By the time he inherited the company, he had perfected the art of being untouchable. People called him cruel. He preferred efficient. Marriage proposals came wrapped in alliances and expectations. He rejected them all. Romance felt like a negotiation he never wanted to enter. Then a child collided with him in a mall and asked him if he was lonely. The thought unsettled him as he walked Katie and Mandy to the parking structure later that evening. Mandy slept in Katie's arms, her small body warm and trusting. Sonbin noticed how naturally Katie adjusted her hold, how her movements were instinctive, protective. "You don't have to walk us," Katie said softly. "I know," he replied. "I want to." That answer surprised them both. At the car, Mandy stirred, blinking sleepily when Sonbin opened the door for her. She studied him with serious eyes. "Thank you for the date," she said solemnly. His lips twitched. "You're welcome." "Will you come again?" she asked. Katie froze. Sonbin paused. "I don't make promises easily," he said carefully. Mandy nodded. "That's okay. Mommy doesn't either." Something in his chest tightened. He closed the door gently and straightened. "Get home safely," he said to Katie. "Seoul can be unkind to people who are tired." Katie smiled faintly. "So can life." As she drove away, Sonbin stood there longer than necessary, watching the car disappear into traffic. For the first time in years, his apartment felt too quiet when he returned. That night, he dreamed of his mother's voice and a child's laughter layered over it. And he woke unsettled. Katie Mison's life in Korea was not glamorous. It was measured in early mornings and late nights, in packed lunches and subway rides, in moments of exhaustion she never allowed to reach her face when Mandy was watching. Seoul moved fast, and for a long time, Katie felt like she was always a step behind, learning the rhythm of a city that did not slow down for anyone. She worked at first wherever she could. Translation support, administrative roles, consulting work that paid just enough to survive. Her qualifications impressed on paper, but her accent, her skin, and her unfamiliarity with corporate culture often placed her one step outside the door. Still she stayed. She studied Korean in the evenings, memorizing phrases while Mandy colored beside her at the small kitchen table. She listened more than she spoke. Observed how power moved quietly, strategically in offices and meetings. She learned that in Korea respect was earned not through noise but consistency. Over time she found her place. A mid-sized investment firm took a chance on her analytical skills. Her supervisors noticed. So did competitors. But she kept her head down, focusing on stability, not ambition. Her priority was Mandy's school, safety and warmth. She decorated their small apartment with color and laughter, turning limited space into home. At night, when Mandy slept, Katie allowed herself to dream quietly. Not of revenge, of security, of dignity, of a life where her daughter would never need to beg strangers for happiness. She did not know that fate had already begun adjusting its course. Songbin tried to forget them. He told himself the encounter had been an anomaly, a break in routine caused by curiosity, nothing more. But Mandy's voice echoed in his thoughts at odd moments, her blunt honesty disrupting meetings and calculations. You look lonely. He found himself driving past the mall one evening without intending to. Another time he paused near children's bookstore, confused by the unfamiliar pull of it. It irritated him. Then his assistant mentioned an analyst by name Misan. She's sharp, the man said. Quiet but impressive. The name registered slowly. Songbin did not comment. But later, alone in his office, he pulled the file. Black American. Single mother. Consistent performance. Unremarkable background until recently. Something about that trajectory caught his attention. It wasn't dramatic. It was disciplined. He closed the file. He told himself he was simply being thorough. Still, that night, when his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, his heart reacted before his mind did. This is Katie. Mandy wanted to say thank you again. A photo followed. Mandy grinned into the camera, missing tooth proudly displayed, holding up a handwritten note that read, "Thank you for the date." Songbin stared at the screen longer than he should have. Then for the first time in years he smiled. The conference room on the 32nd floor was filled with restrained energy. Executives sat in silence, tablets and documents neatly arranged, waiting for the meeting to begin. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Seoul's skyline, the city stretching endlessly in every direction, powerful, ambitious, unforgiving. Katie Misan sat near the end of the table. She was not the most senior person in the room, nor the loudest, but she had learned that in rooms like this, presence mattered more than position. She reviewed her notes calmly, unaware that she was being observed long before the meeting officially started. The door opened. Conversation halted instantly. Songbin Choi entered without announcement, his presence changing the temperature of the room. Suit straightened. Spine stiffened. Eyes sharpened with attention. Katie felt it before she saw him, that subtle shift that meant power had arrived. When she looked up, recognition hit her like a quiet shock. For a fraction of a second their eyes met. No surprise. No greeting. Just awareness. Songbin took his seat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. He did not acknowledge her. Not even with a nod. To everyone else she was just another analyst. And somehow that restraint felt more intimate than familiarity. The meeting began. Katie spoke only once. But when she did, the room leaned in. Her analysis was precise, insightful and unafraid. She did not oversell. She did not apologize. She spoke as someone who trusted her own understanding. Songbin listened. He asked questions not to challenge but to explore. Katie answered without flinching. There was no hesitation in her voice, no attempt to impress. When the meeting ended, several executives glanced at her with renewed interest. Songbin stood. "Ms. Misan," he said calmly, his tone strictly professional. "Stay." The room emptied quickly. Katie remained seated, her pulse steady but alert. When the door closed, silence filled the space between them. "You didn't tell me you worked in finance," he said. "You didn't ask," she replied. A corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "That was intentional," he said. "You don't want special treatment." "I don't need it," Katie said evenly. "I earned my seat." He studied her for a moment. "Good," he said. "So did I." He moved closer to the window, hands in his pockets. "I won't pretend our meeting at the mall didn't happen. But in this room we are professionals." "I agree," she said. "My daughter doesn't change my competence." "That's not what I meant," he replied. "Your personal life stays yours." She appreciated that more than she expected. As she gathered her things, he spoke again. "There's a charity gala this weekend," he said casually. "It's not a date." She paused. "Then why are you inviting me?" "Because Mandy would be disappointed if I disappeared again," he said. "And because I don't like unfinished conversations." Katie considered him carefully. I'll come, she said. For 1 hour. He nodded. I'll hold you to that. As she left, Sonbin watched her go, aware that this overlap professional, personal, accidental was no longer coincidence. Was momentum. And neither of them could stop it now. The gala glittered the way only Seoul's elite gatherings did, understated luxury, quiet wealth, and conversations layered with intention. Crystal lights reflected off polished marble floors, and the air hummed with power disguised as politeness. Katie arrived precisely on time. She wore a deep emerald dress that complemented her skin without screaming for attention, her hair styled simply, elegantly. Mandy was not with her tonight. This was one space Katie refused to blur. Motherhood had taught her boundaries. When she entered, heads turned. Not because she was loud, but because she was different. Sonbin noticed immediately. He crossed the room with measured steps, his gaze calm but alert. When he reached her, he did not offer his arm, he offered space. You look comfortable here, he observed. I learned how to adapt, Katie replied. It doesn't mean I belong. Belonging is overrated, he said. Power is what matters. She smiled faintly. That explains a lot about you. They spoke easily, not flirtatiously but honestly. Their conversation drew subtle attention. Whispers floated just beneath the music. A black woman. Co. Too close. Too calm. Too confident. By the time Sonbin excused himself briefly, the room had already started to interpret. She's bold, someone murmured. She's ambitious, another said. Katie heard none of it. Until she did. A woman approached, impeccably dressed, smile sharpened by curiosity. I don't believe we've met, she said. I'm Jihyun. Katie recognized the tone instantly. Test. Katie, she replied calmly. Jihyun's gaze flicked briefly toward Sonbin across the room. You must be interesting, she said lightly. The chairman rarely brings guests. I wasn't brought, Katie said. I was invited. Jihyun's smile faltered just enough. Careful, she said softly. Men like him don't mix business with complications. Katie met her gaze steadily. Then it's fortunate I don't see myself as one. The woman laughed thinly and drifted away. When Sonbin returned, he found Katie unchanged, poised, untouched by the undercurrent of judgment. You handled that well, he said quietly. I've been underestimated before, Katie replied. It doesn't scare me. That night, as cameras flashed discreetly and names circulated, something irreversible happened. Katie Mason became visible. And visibility always came with cost. The change was subtle at first. Meetings Katie once attended without issue were rescheduled without notice. Emails went unanswered. A proposal she had spent weeks refining was quietly reassigned to someone else. No explanation. No confrontation. Just a race. Katie noticed immediately. She did not panic. She had survived worse than professional discomfort. Still, the pattern was too deliberate to ignore. One afternoon, as she reviewed data alone in a glass-walled office, a colleague paused at her door. You should be careful, the woman said quietly. You're being discussed. Katie looked up calmly. By whom? By people who think you're getting ahead too quickly. Katie nodded. She had expected this. What she hadn't expected was the meeting request that followed. The conference room was smaller this time, windowless, the kind designed to feel official without warmth. Two senior partners sat across from her, expressions neutral but guarded. We value your contributions, one began, voice smooth. But perception matters. Katie waited. There are concerns, the other added, about how closely you're associated with certain external figures. Katie understood instantly. Sonbin. My work stands on its own, she said evenly. If there are questions about performance, I'm happy to address them. That's not the issue, the first man replied. We're advising discretion. Katie folded her hands. You're advising silence. They exchanged glances. We're advising survival. Katie leaned back slightly. I didn't come this far to disappear quietly, she said. If my competence makes people uncomfortable, that's not my problem. The meeting ended without resolution. That night, Katie walked home slowly, soul glowing around her, the city indifferent to her internal storm. She thought of Mandy, of promises made, of dignity earned inch by inch. She would not shrink. Sonbin noticed the shift too. He watched how conversations paused when Katie entered a room, how alliances subtly tightened around her exclusion. It was a familiar territory, power protecting itself. One evening he asked her directly. They're pressuring you, he said. Yes, Katie replied simply. Because of me. Because I exist, she corrected. You just made it visible. He studied her carefully. I can intervene. She shook her head. No. If you step in now, they'll say I can't stand on my own. That doesn't mean I do nothing. It means you trust me, she said. That trust settled between them like a quiet contract. Later that week, Katie presented a revised strategy, one no one could ignore. Her projections were solid. Her logic airtight. The room fell silent. Approval followed. Reluctantly. Respect, however, had begun to grow. That night, Sonbin walked her to her car again. You didn't ask for help, he said. I didn't need saving, Katie replied. I needed space. He nodded. For the first time he realized something unsettling. He wasn't protecting her. He was learning from her. Mandy met Sonbin again on a rainy Saturday afternoon. Katie had not planned it. She had taken Mandy to a small art studio tucked between cafes in Itaewon, a place filled with paint-splattered tables and laughter that smelled faintly of clay and wet paper. Mandy loved it there. It made her feel big and important, like her thoughts mattered. Katie was helping Mandy clean her hands when she heard a familiar voice behind her. You came. She turned. Sonbin stood near the entrance, no suit this time, just a dark coat and relaxed posture that made him look younger, less guarded. I didn't know you would be here, Katie said honestly. I didn't either, he replied. I was invited to observe a community project. I thought I'd leave quietly. Mandy spotted him instantly. Uncle, she shouted, running toward him with paint-stained hands. Katie froze. Sonbin froze too. But when Mandy wrapped her arms around his leg, something inside him softened without permission. I made a picture for you, Mandy announced, holding up a piece of paper smeared with bold colors. It's you and Mommy and me. Sonbin stared at the drawing longer than necessary. 3 stick figures. One tall. One gentle. One small, smiling widely. I look very happy, he said quietly. That's because you are, Mandy said matter-of-factly. You just forgot. Katie swallowed. They sat together afterward not as something defined, but as something forming. Mandy chatted endlessly, filling the air with innocent truths and sharp observations. Sonbin listened, genuinely listened, as if her words mattered more than any boardroom discussion. At one point Mandy leaned close to him. Do you have a mommy? She asked. Yes, he answered softly. I had one. Did she hug you? The question struck deeper than intended. Not much, he admitted. Mandy considered this seriously, then hugged him without asking. Sonbin stiffened then slowly relaxed. Katie watched silently, something aching gently in her chest. Later, as rain tapped softly against the windows, Sonbin walked them home. You don't talk about your future, he said suddenly to Katie. What do you want? She thought for a moment. I want to build something my daughter can stand on, she said. Something that doesn't disappear if someone leaves. He nodded. That night, Sonbin lay awake in his quiet apartment, Mandy's laughter echoing in his memory. For the first time he imagined a future that wasn't empty. Not ambitious, just full. Katie had never spoken her dreams aloud. Not because she lacked them, but because she had learned how easily dreams became weapons in the wrong hands. She carried her plans privately, nurturing them the way she once cradled Mandy carefully, protectively. But power had a way of drawing truth to the surface. The proposal came unexpectedly. A struggling subsidiary. Declining numbers. Internal resistance. The kind of project ambitious executives avoided because failure would be public and permanent. Katie volunteered. The room fell silent. Sonbin watched her closely. This division has consumed 3 directors, one executive said. It's not a safe assignment. Katie met his gaze calmly. Then it's overdue for someone who isn't playing safe. Murmurs rippled across the table. After the meeting, Sonbin called her into his office. You don't need to prove anything, he said. I know, Katie replied. That's why I want it. He studied her with steady eyes, the absence of fear, the confidence rooted in survival rather than arrogance. What's your end goal? He asked. Katie hesitated only briefly. I want ownership, she said. Influence. The ability to protect what I build. He did not smile. Instead he nodded. You think like someone who has lost everything before. I have, she said simply. He approved the assignment. Resistance followed immediately. Executives questioned her authority. Subordinates tested her resolve. Old biases resurfaced under professional language. Katie did not react emotionally. She restructured quietly. Listened strategically. Made changes without spectacle. Within weeks, numbers shifted. The division stabilized, then improved. Sonbin watched from a distance, impressed and unsettled. She wasn't chasing him. She was outgrowing the room. One evening he found himself asking a question he had never asked anyone before. "What happens when you succeed?" he asked. Katie smiled softly. "Then I'll make sure my daughter never has to beg strangers to love her mother." The words hit him harder than any accusation. For the first time, Sonbin felt fear not of failure but of loss. Because somewhere between boardrooms and playgrounds, Katie Misan had become irreplaceable. Sonbin Choi had built empires by anticipating loss before it arrived, but love did not move like business. It waited, it softened, and then it asked questions he could no longer avoid. The night he realized he loved Katie Misan was not dramatic. There was no confession, no sweeping gesture. It happened quietly. He arrived at her apartment later than expected, rain still clinging to his coat, shoulders heavy with a day that had demanded too much. The door opened before he could knock. Katie stood there barefoot, hair pulled back loosely, wearing an oversized sweaters because she had been doing laundry and forgotten to change. The smell of home wrapped around him immediately, food, warmth, something alive. "You look tired," she said softly. No one ever said that to him. They asked what he needed, what he decided, what he controlled. Never how he felt. "I am," he admitted. Mandy peeked out from behind her mother's legs, grinning. "You came back," she announced as if this was a daily miracle. "I told you I would," he replied. Inside, the apartment glowed gently. Mandy's drawings lined the walls. Katie's laptop sat open on the table beside financial notes and a half-finished cup of tea. A life in motion, a life that did not wait for permission. As Mandy climbed onto his lap without hesitation, Sonbin felt it fully. This was not distraction, this was not risk. This was home trying to happen. Sonbin did not ask Katie to slow down, he did not ask her to choose him over herself. Instead, one evening as they stood on her balcony watching Seoul breathe beneath them, he said quietly, "I don't want to be an addition to your life." Katie turned to him, searching his face. "I want to be someone who walks beside you." She studied him for a long moment, then she nodded. "That's the only way I'd ever allow it." There was no dramatic kiss, no music swelling. Just understanding. From that day on, their relationship settled into something rare: mutual respect, unforced affection, love that did not demand proof. Katie's family arrived from America in spring. Her mother cried the moment she saw Mandy run freely through Sonbin's garden. Her father watched quietly, noting everything: the patience, the consistency, the way Sonbin never spoke over Katie. Naomi teased him mercilessly. Marcus tested him with sharp questions. Sonbin answered all of them honestly. "I didn't save her," he said simply. "She saved herself. I was just lucky enough to meet her afterward." That was when Evelyn Masson took his hands and said, "Then love her gently." "I already do," he replied. It happened on a normal afternoon. No planning, no setup. Mandy was coloring at the table when she looked up suddenly. "Uncle Sonbin," she said, "if you and Mommy are always together, does that mean you're family now?" The room went still. Katie's breath caught. Sonbin lowered himself to Mandy's level. "Family isn't about always being together," he said carefully. "It's about choosing each other every day." Mandy thought hard. "Then do you choose us?" He did not hesitate. "Yes." Mandy smiled, satisfied, then looked at her mother. "See, Mommy, I told you he wasn't lonely anymore." Katie covered her mouth as tears finally fell, not from pain but from release. Sonbin proposed quietly. No cameras, no spectacle. Just the three of them on the same balcony where everything had begun. "I don't want to own your future," he told Katie. "I want to build it with you at your pace, on your terms." Katie said yes without fear. Because for the first time in her life, yes felt safe. They married in spring. A simple ceremony overlooking water. Katie wore elegance, not extravagance. Sonbin wore peace on his face for the first time in his life. Mandy walked between them, holding both their hands. Her mother watched proudly. Her father smiled quietly. Sonbin's world finally softened. When the vows ended, Mandy clapped first. "Now we're forever," she announced. And for once, forever did not feel heavy. Katie became a partner not just because of love but because of merit. Sonbin remained powerful but no longer alone. Their home filled with laughter, arguments, quiet evenings, shared dreams. And Mandy grew up knowing something precious. That love does not betray, that strength can be gentle, that sometimes, the bravest thing a child can do is speak the truth. And sometimes, that truth changes everything.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel. Click on the notification icon so that you will get notified whenever a new story is posted. Also leave us a like, comment, and share to others who love good stories.